Hello again. I am not, in the usual way of things, all that keen on seeing other countries interfering in the internal affairs of Britain. But we are now in such a desperate state that I welcome aid from a long-term ally. Our country has, at least to my way of thinking, been taken over by fifth columnists who are not working for the interests of ordinary British people. We are in a similar case to those who were living in Vichy France under the rule of Marshal Pétain and his collaborationist government. The French people knew that only Britain and America could free them from the situation in which they found themselves. And now some of us look to the United States for support in much the same way. I think that President Trump realizes this, and his threat to sue the BBC is part of the assistance which he is offering us. Because if the BBC went to the wall, then our government would no longer have a mouthpiece which slavishly echoed the dangerous and divisive ideology to which Keir Starmer and his associates are wedded. It will, I suspect, be a painful process, but not as bloody as the liberation of France in 1944. There is today talk of a plan to depose the Prime Minister and replace him with somebody who might command more respect from both the British public and international leaders, but it's hard to imagine who that might be. Rachel Reeves, perhaps? Yvette Cooper? David Lammy? I think that we all know, and even the government are aware, that they have run out of road and no longer command any respect or loyalty from the average citizen. I have never known a more hated and despised leader than Starmer, for whom nobody has a good word. The latest scheme of this terrible crowd is to hang on to power by bribing those on benefits, along with immigrants, to continue to support them. This is Labour's client base, rather than those who work for a living. I know quite a few people who are working, and they range from the extreme left to the moderately right wing, and without exception they loathe the Prime Minister. On the other hand, those on benefits, Muslims, black people and foreigners, support him by and large wholeheartedly, for he will scatter taxpayers' money in their direction at any opportunity. Money taken, of course, from those working people who so detest him. I'm sure that President Trump is trying to help us by menacing the BBC, but he is also probably furiously angry on a personal level because the BBC used disinformation to try and alter the course of the American election. We hear a lot about how Russia supposedly interferes in Western democracies and tries to rig elections, but here is plain and indisputable evidence that Britain's national broadcaster was actually up to that very game. No wonder the Americans are annoyed. I don't think that Labour will get away with replacing the Prime Minister with somebody else if they are really minded to attempt that. It is a trick which has been pulled once too often in recent years. Of course, we've seen it happen from time to time since the end of the war, with Anthony Eden replacing Churchill without an election, Callaghan replacing Wilson, and so on. But in recent years, the gag has been worked pretty much to death, with Gordon Brown, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, and so on. I don't think people will wear that happening again. The honest course of action would be to call a fresh election, but then Starmer is hardly noted for adopting honest courses of action. Maybe the Americans might lend a hand with moral support. I'm not suggesting you understand an American-backed coup d'etat, but I think it is in the interest of the United States to retain us as a strong ally rather than see the country fall into ruin, which might well be the consequence if Starmer and his gang are not removed sooner rather than later.